Welcome everyone to today's session. In the last practice video, we looked at the foundational aspects of uniting our breath with our movement in our asana practice. Take a look at that video if you've not seen it before, but essentially, to summarize, we looked at and practiced making each movement the same length as our breath, or each breath the same length as the movement that it was supporting. And through practicing that in different postures, we were hopefully able to find our optimum breath and movement rhythm. And one of the things that I mentioned in the previous video, which I'm going to mention again, is that this is a particularly useful thing to do when it relates to our home practice, because it's only really when we practice on our own that we have the possibility to work at our own pace of breath. Of course, when we're in a studio or when we're in a group setting, then the breath pace is really set by the person guiding the session, and it often will not relate to our most comfortable optimum length breath, which is a breath that basically feels comfortable, that is slightly longer than our usual breath, but that does not place any undue strain or tension on our physiological systems, and also doesn't cause us to gasp for air in the subsequent breath. So what we're going to do today is we're going to take that just a stage further, which is to incorporate this new concept or this new practice, which is not just that the length of the breath and the length of the movement are the same. Actually, what we want to do this time is to encapsulate the entire movement within the breath itself. And what that means is that we're going to be practicing starting our inhale, and then maybe just a moment or two after the inhale has started, we're going to start the movement. And then at the end of the movement, we're going to practice just seeing if we can extend our exhalation just a little bit past the end point of the movement itself. Now, what you're probably going to find is that this is a little bit more demanding, perhaps for a couple of reasons. You may not find it demanding, and that's great. But on one hand, the thing that's demanding about it is that it requires even more concentration, because it's so easy for us to just subconsciously start the movement with the breath at the same time, because this is a samskara or a pattern that we've just developed in our practice. So that's the first thing. It really means that we have to pay attention to what we're doing, but also it may feel like we have to extend the breath further. And this is something that we can do something about, because actually we don't need to do that. All we need to do is keep an eye on the pace at which we're moving in order to make the pace comfortable within the scope of the length of breath that is optimum for us. So without further ado, let us sort of jump into the practice. So as we did last time, we're just going to start seated. And the reason that we do this is because we want to do a little bit of breath regulation before we stand and start moving, because we want to just reacquaint our bodies and our minds and become familiar with the pattern of breath that suits us best, and therefore the rhythm of breath that we're going to draw through into our asana, into our movement practice. So just come to any comfortable seated position. Just take a moment to settle. Draw your mind away from distractions and slowly begin the process of connecting your awareness to the flow of your breath. Now, at this point, as always, when we start, we're not doing anything with the breath. We're just simply greeting the breath. We're saying hello to it. We're beginning to notice its shape, its form, its texture, its pace. And we're doing this so that we can bring the mind deeper and deeper into connection with that which we observe, which is the breath in this moment. Breath is in and out through the nose, not through the mouth. And slowly start to extend the length of your inhalation, working at your own pace. So slightly longer inhale, feel the expansion across the front of the body, followed by a pause as always. And then breathing out through the nose, again a long, comfortable exhalation, gentle contraction of the abdominal muscles back towards the spine, again followed by a pause. And now just come into your own pace of breath. So continue to breathe in this way. Continue to search for, to explore, to notice how long and comfortably can I breathe, and what kind of length of breath works for me without causing strain, without causing tension. And find a steady, rhythmical pattern of breath. The inhales and the exhales are bookended by the pauses, just very short pauses. They're not holds, they're just soft pauses, just openings in the moment of time before we begin the next part of the breath. So with this moment, your eyes are closed, you're just breathing, you're noticing the sensations of those breaths in the body, and you're just seeing if you can find that comfortable breath that is sustainable. And that means you should be able to breathe in this way time and time again without having to take a break. If you're noticing that the breath is so long that every 4 or 5 breaths you're gasping for air, or there's a lot of tension in the body as a result of the way you're breathing, just try to soften it as best you can. Okay, let's take maybe 1 or 2 more breaths in this way. And then at the end of your next exhale, just let go of that practice. Return to natural breath for a moment or 2. Then we can open our eyes and we're going to come to stand on our mats. Feet slightly apart. And remember that today we're just taking this practice a stage further. So we're going to initiate the inhale, then the movement. We're going to stop the movement, and then after the end of the movement, we're going to stop the breath. So we'll do the first 2 together. I'll do them at a relatively calm pace, but not too slow. And then after we've done that twice, then please come into your own pace of breath. So arms alongside the body. Okay, so start the inhale, then raise the arms, continue to breathe in all the way to the top, then the palms meet or the arms stop, and then the inhale continues just for a moment, pause. Then you start the exhale. After the exhale has started, the arms start to descend down alongside the body, the hands touch the outside of the legs, the exhale continues for a moment, then it stops. Let's continue. Start the inhale, then engage the movement. The arms are coming up as we're breathing in, raising the arms overhead. When the movement stops, we continue breathing just for a moment, then a pause. Initiate the exhale, then initiate the movement, bringing the arms down. Completing the movement, continuing to breathe out for a moment, and then pause. Continue in your own time, at your own pace. Remember, start the inhale, then initiate the movement. Stop the movement, then after the movement has stopped, then stop the exhale. See how that feels, and notice how many times after you've started inhaling you realize, oh, oops, I moved my arms at the same time as I initiated the inhale. Similarly with the exhale, how many times do you initiate the exhale and then actually bring the arms down at the same time as the exhale? So just explore this. It takes practice, it takes being aware, it takes being calm, it takes trying not to move too intensely and realizing that we're doing a very unitive practice here where there's not total focus on the form, but there's just this nice intermingling of the movement with the breath and just trying to notice how we can bring that subtlety of awareness, that we can create that space between the start of the inhalation and the movement and the end of the movement and then the end of the exhale. So just continue doing that maybe 1 or 2 more times, just exploring what it feels like, noticing what you have to adjust. Do I have to lengthen my breath if I've got the capacity to do so to fit the movement, or alternatively, do I have to speed up the movement a little bit so it allows me the time to initiate, start, stop the movement, and then stop the breath afterwards. 1 more time, nice and patient, no rush at all, and then release. Okay. So as we did last time, we're just going to use similar postures just so it helps us to understand and explore what this feels like. So we're going to do an easy forward bend. I'll do the first one, and then please take it into your own pace. So standing comfortably, start your inhale, then slowly after the inhale, raise the arms up overhead, stop the movement, then end the breath. Pause. Start your exhale, then slowly continuing with the exhale, initiate the movement all the way down, maybe bend the knees, pause. And slowly starting to inhale, then initiating the movement, coming all the way up, arms overhead, movement ends, then the breath ends. Start the exhale, then the movement begins, encompassing the exhale, continuing until the hands stop, and then pausing at the end of the exhale after the end of the movement. Okay. Now continue on your own. Start the movement, arms go up, movement stops, breath stops. Start the exhale, then initiate the movement down, forward bend, the movement stops, then the breath stops. Similarly, you start the inhale, arms coming all the way up, movement stops, breath stops. Start the exhale, arms coming down, the movement stops, then the breath stops. Continue. We're just playing around, we're just exploring. It may feel very, very simple on one level, but then really see how many breaths and movements can you string together where the breath is comfortable, the movement is aligned, and we're starting the breath and ending the breath after the beginning and the end of the movement. And what you may find is that the more you get comfortable with the movement, the easier it is to actually forget what you're doing with the breath. And there might be times that you're so focused on the breath that you kind of forget what you're doing with the movement, and then the movement doesn't quite fit and flow as it might do. So this really is a simple but subtly complicated practice when we first start it. And then gradually what we want to see if we can do is just to incorporate this in all of our movement and breath practices, most likely when we're practicing on our own, because it's rare that we will get the opportunity to practice in this way in a group setting. So let's do that one more time. Paying attention, keeping the mind drawn inwards as best we can. Great. So slightly different to last time, but again, something still quite simple in terms of movement. So we're going to come down to the back of the mat in Vajrasana, and then we're just going to come into a forward bend position, a child's pose, but with the knees sort of closer together than usual, not with the knees out to the side, and the palms on the ground. And we're going to simply come up into an arched spine position on all fours like this. And then on exhale, we're going to come down back into this child's pose, incorporating what we've been practicing so far. So come down into child's pose. We'll do maybe 2 together. And then as I've been doing, I'll let you kind of practice on your own for a few rounds. So let's begin. Start the inhale. Moments afterwards, initiate the movement, coming up to all fours, arching the spine, stopping the movement, then ending the inhalation. After the pause, initiating the exhalation, then moving into the exhalation, drawing the hips down, the body down towards the ground. Stop the movement, moment later, then stop the breath, pause. One more time together. Start the inhalation, then initiate the movement, breathing in all the time, stopping the movement in the back arch, then pausing the breath. Starting the exhale, then slowly descending all the way down, continuing to exhale into child's pose, stopping the movement, then stopping the breath. Please continue. Just again, we're just exploring, how do I link breath and movement together, and how do I create this slight pause where I'm not moving until I've already initiated the inhale, and then how do I extend my breath beyond the end of the movement. So it really is encapsulated. Each movement arises within, in the center of each breath. So just continue to flow with that. Close your eyes, get deep into your body, get deep into your breath. Really explore, notice what this is doing, notice how you have to pay more attention, and therefore by its nature, this makes it a more engaging meditative practice, because the minute that the mind wanders, we completely lose any hope of being able to notice whether we're breathing before the start of the movement, whether we're breathing at the end of the movement itself. So maybe just try that 1 or 2 more times. Nice and slow. Really tuning into your own inner experience. And then when you've finished, just pressing yourself up, and we're going to come to a seated forward bend, the same way that we finished the last session. And again, remember that the knees can be bent or the legs can be straight, whatever feels comfortable. Let's close the eyes. We'll do the first one together, and then you can continue at your own pace. So from here, we start the inhale, then the arms follow all the way up. The movement ends, the breath ends. We start the exhale, we engage the movement coming all the way down. The movement ends, the breath ends. As you start to inhale, then slowly raising the arms, coming all the way up. The movement ends, then the breath ends, and then bringing the arms down, we start the exhale, then initiate the movement with the arms coming down. The movement stops, and then the breath stops. Please continue. Keep practicing that, maybe 2 or 3 times. Noticing if in this position you're able to maybe slow the breath down a little bit more. Therefore, noticing that you also have to slow down the movement. Notice whether it feels easier to start the inhale and then initiate the breath. Start the inhale and then initiate the movement. Or whether it feels more comfortable in this posture, stopping the movement and then finding space to continue the exhale. Just play around with all of that. We're not judging. We're really not trying to change too much in this practice. We're just observing, can I bring my breath into this prescribed pattern? And then to see if I practice that on a regular basis, how does it make me feel? What does it do to the quality of my attention? What does it do to the way I feel after my practice as well? Maybe one more time. Most importantly, just trying to enjoy, trying to soften into the practice, deepen into the practice. And then let's finish there with the movement. You can come back to either a kneeling position or a seated position. Just take a moment to transition. Bring the palms to face upwards, either on the knees or the thighs, dependent on what's comfortable and how you're sitting. Close the eyes for a moment. At this point, the breath is just soft and natural. We're not trying to control it anymore. We'll just sit in silence, just for a moment or two. Just noticing this moment, noticing the sensations arising. Okay, we can open our eyes. So hopefully those 2 videos together now help us to understand how do we link breath and movement, and then also how do we encapsulate the movement within the length of the breath. And it's worth mentioning that these are some of the key breath teachings. There are others as well of Sri Krishnamacharya and his son TKV Desikachar, and they really do form the backbone and the basis of all of their kind of asana teachings and practices. So thanks for joining me. Hopefully I'll do another video soon which talks a little bit more about their practices, their lineage, and their influence on yoga practice in general. So thanks for joining me. I hope you found that useful. Namaste.